Welcome everyone. It is IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective, and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice in your everyday life. So it is Valentine's week, and we thought instead of the world news, we would tackle world holidays and celebrations and dive directly into the world of advice. Only tonight it's spiritual advice, and it's about love, relationships, everything Valentine's week. So we're excited to have you with us, both online on YouTube and here in the studio audience. And before we get started, right away, down below, like tonight's episode and share widely with all your friends, family, fellow spiritual seekers. This will be dating and love advice unlike any other that you can get out there. So it's going to be valuable for everybody. And again, we are IKYA.official on both YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. So again, tonight's conversation, and it is a conversation, is really dependent on your engagement, your questions, and your perspective, your comments, because we really want to assist everybody in navigating an increasingly complex world of, interhuman relationships. We're just making it more and more complicated as time goes on with artificial intelligence and social media and technology, all these different layers. And then when we try to also lift our consciousness and look at love and relationships from a spiritual perspective, well, then we've really got a challenge in front of us. And tonight we want to unpack that and simplify it, make it clear and loving. Tonight is a space of love and connection. So let's go ahead and dive in, but please write in your questions and comments in the chat below, or our studio audience will ask questions, and let's have a real conversation and discussion with IKYA tonight. So to get started, IKYA, we asked a really fundamental question in a lot of people's lives. How can we attract the perfect life partner?
It's actually very simple, but I'm not going to tell you. Yes, I am. We'll get back to that actually. Let's start with the problems and then we can look at the solutions, right? Now, we have too many expectations. I often talk about the consumer mindset that we have developed, especially in our part of the world, but it's spreading around the world. We all have more expectations to everything, and we just want things to work, right? We're not used to putting effort into anything, right? When you push a button, it should work, right? I want to watch my shows on TV. We don't understand anymore that things take effort. And one thing that I find really funny is that because in this part of the world, there are fewer and fewer siblings, right? Many grow up as the only child. And maybe also just with 2 kids. In the old days, you had like between 5 and 10 siblings. And you would get a much more realistic perspective on your value and your place in life, right? Because you would experience aggression and negotiation, and you'd have to find your way in life and live with your whole family. Right? Today, kids grow up and they're being told that they're so special. Oh, they're so special. And of course they're not. Let's face it, we're not special, right? We're just full of ourselves, and that's not the same thing. But we believe that means that we're special. So when we grow up and we then think that we're very special, we deserve someone who's also very special. So the problem there, because we basically expect too much of the world, we expect too much from other people, and we expect too little of ourselves, because after all, we're special, right? So why should I have to do anything, right? I'm perfect just the way I am. I should be loved just the way I am. And if somebody does not love me for just who I am, I don't want them. And back to what I often talk about, you're not good enough the way you are. That's the whole premise of incarnation. That's why we incarnate, because we're not good enough. The reason why you go to school is that you don't know enough, right? The reason why your employer wants you to take additional courses is because you're not good enough at your job. We're never good enough at anything. And that's a beautiful part of life, that there's always room for improvement, that we can always learn, we can always grow, we can always heal, right? But we live in a very strange kind of place right now in human history, where we expect so much. And we expect other people to be the way we want them to be, right? Part of the young culture today is that many young people, they expect to go through life without ever having to hear anything they disagree with. And if they hear something they disagree with, they're the victim of emotional violence, right? Try to build a relationship with that going on, right? But these are the expectations we often grow up with when we live in a single, kid household. All right, even just when there are two, it's not enough social training. So that's actually a big part of it. It's when you go back 100, 150 years, most families consider like 5 to 8 to 10 kids, and most of them died, but you just became more realistic, right? And you learned that you had to work, you had to achieve, you had to do something. Who you were, nobody cared about that. You were not special. You were not anything. People only noticed the value you brought them. So when you wanted a partner, it was like, okay, can he pay the bills? Does he have a house? Can he take care of the family, right? Is he a decent man? And for a woman, can she have kids? Does she seem to be a good mother? Or all of that. We looked for practical qualities. Being liked for who you are was not on the list. Being appreciated was not on the list. So basically, my job is this, your job is this, and we're creating a life together. So once we all became special, it just fucked up everything. Because instead of focusing on what it takes to build a relationship, we focus on how can this person make me feel, right? And well, there are so many mistakes we do to do, but one of them, of course, is that we expect someone else to compensate for our weaknesses. That's insane, right? It's like, I don't like myself, so I'm going to find someone who will tell me that I'm beautiful. And if that person does not tell me that I'm beautiful, then I will be insulted and I will feel rejected, and it's their fault. It's all of that crap, right? So I always try to explain to people that how you feel is not someone else's responsibility. And yet today, it's the number one thing we're looking for in a relationship, right? We see a relationship as some form of, self-medication strategy. It's all about how we feel, because life is difficult, right? In the old days, life was hard, but it wasn't difficult. Two different things, right? It can be very hard to survive, but you knew what you were supposed to do, right? Today it's too complex, so we get confused and all of this, and we have so many emotions, and our brain chemicals are all over the place. Also, because we're basically poisoning ourselves through what we eat. We have so many toxins around us. We experience chemical imbalance from that. Our whole culture is completely nuts when it comes to values, ethics, all of that. And again, we're all very special. So when we mix all of that together, it's difficult to have realistic expectations when meeting someone, right? At the core of it, when we separate the feelings, right, it is about what value you bring. In the old days, and still today, many people think of the scale, from 1 to 10, what are you? Today, a lot of people say, well, I'm a 10 because I have to believe in myself. No. That's why it doesn't work. Because it's not about what you think about yourself. It's about how other people value you. Value is only what other people give you based on what you give them, right? So it's what are you bringing? It's so delusional to think that someone will like you just for you. Every relationship is also transactional because the fundamentals, when it comes to relationships throughout human evolution, has been finding someone that can assist you in creating what you want and help you survive and be successful at it so you can then have successful kids and all of that. It's a partner. It's work, right? And throughout history, husband and wife, they've always been working together, right? Think of running a farm, right? Or something else. The family was always the team. So we know how to do things together. We're not as intelligent when it comes to negotiating our own emotions and our own needs. We just know that I don't feel well and I think that person should do that or give that to me. Your emotions is your own responsibility. Your well-being is your own responsibility. We need to learn that we are the only ones responsible for ourselves, our well-being, our survival. And other people, they're responsible for their survival and their well-being, because it means that when we then meet, it's from a place of abundance, right? It's not trying to make someone else fix you or compensate for your weaknesses. Your weaknesses are not something other people are interested in, right? What they're interested in are your strengths. But often, when it comes to our strengths, we feel self-asserted and independent, so we don't need anyone, right? It's in our weaknesses we feel we need someone. But then it's for the wrong purpose. It's only your strengths that give you value in the eyes of other people. And it's that. We have too many weaknesses and too few strengths for this modern life. And we have to then learn to become better partners by understanding what am I actually bringing. Because your feelings and believing that you deserve to be loved is nobody else will be interested in that. Right? How are you as a partner? What are you bringing in? What are you offering a potential partner? Right? Most people are not thinking this through because we're special. The moment we understand that we're not special, we're not a catch. Most of us are just, normal people and not that interesting. There's a reason why you want someone else to fill the gap, because you're fucking boring, right? We're not a catch. Being human is a strange and interesting experience, but most of us are not that interesting, right? But often what we do is a partner who can make us feel that we're interesting and fun. No. You have to look at your strengths, because that's what you're bringing in. You need to become aware of, the value you are bringing in. It's like a business merger. You have to look at your strengths. And that's what you have to offer. And the rest, that's your business. It's not your partner's job to heal you, to compensate for you, to give you whatever feelings you want. That's for you to figure out. But, when in the old days, when we grew up with maybe, between 5 and 10 brothers and sisters, we would have to learn to negotiate ourselves, right? Because we had to fight. We had to learn what actually worked in survival, manipulation, conversation, fighting, working together, having fun, hating each other, all of that. But we became better people. Right? We're becoming very rapidly in the West, worse and worse, more and more self-absorbed. Because we think that whatever we feel is so important. In the old days, all of that would have been polished off by the time you were 12, right? So you could become a more decent, family-oriented person. So we emphasize our needs and emotions too much today, instead of looking at what it takes to form a relationship. Because love and emotions, love and feelings are separate, right? And what we think we deserve is delusional. It's got nothing to do with anything. Love is, it happens when both do not need each other. But when they see that I'm with this person, I can love this person, and the other person will see the same. Because it's only when we're past the level of need and patterns that love happens. So when you're able to deal with your own needs or your own stories about being special and understand, that is actually getting in the way. Your partner's job is not to confirm you. Your partner's job is to confront you, to make you better, right? To kind of work with your strengths and your weaknesses and basically be a match to your worth. So basically what you're bringing in, your strengths, combined with that other person's strengths. And then see, okay, this is what we got. These are kind of joint talents. This is the life we can create. And then support each other. Right? When we are too absorbed in our own needs and emotions, we really don't care about how we can create something together. We get blinded by our feelings. And we can see kind of the longer term project that a relationship is. And this is one of the reasons why people today cannot hold on to a relationship. They're not willing to put in the work anymore. Right? I've often said that arranged marriages are better. They're more successful because they're not built on falling in love or like all of that, because that will pass. When you're married and the families have figured out, okay, these people, they have this, like some of the same characteristics, they will be able to figure it out. And that's a starting point. You don't expect anything, right? You don't expect anything. You just expect work and conflict and trying to figure it out. And then over time, love will grow because you know you're in this for life. So you might as well figure it out. And it's not so that all arranged marriages work, but many of them do. And in the West, we're failing miserably when it comes to relationships, right? Because we're looking for the wrong things in the wrong places. One thing that is also interesting that many women are aware of is that women are lousy partners. And the thing is that in female genetics and how the female brain works is that women can feel negative emotions more than men do, right? And it's because since women are kind of weaker physically, life is more dangerous, right? When you think of the whole journey of evolution, women would have to be more careful, right? They needed to fear men, to fear situations, this or that, and to be able to catch things before they happen, right? They need to be able to kind of like sniff out a potential perpetrator, right? So for women, and also, for instance, when it comes to kids, for women to always feel when something is wrong, right? That's been part of their job description. For men, it's been like focusing on the important things in life, you know, hunting and killing and such, you know. So it's different. right? So it simply means that the female brain, female emotions are kind of listening for the negative signals, right? And the typical quarrel that many couples have, is that the thing like, a woman there's something wrong, something's happened, I just know, wait a minute, no, nothing has happened. Well, I know, I could just like, and because you're mad, I'm not mad. Well, and then he gets mad. Told you, right? Because it's kind of sniffing it out. So women in a relationship will have a tendency today, because of a kind of weaker kind of job description and the kind of models through which we kind of like create the relationship is not how we live anymore, right? We do not live in the 1950s. So it means that women try to use their feelings more, and it means they will have a lot more negative emotions than they actually used to. Because they're then when women have more options and when they're not sure, because today divorce is a thing, we can just break up, not even just divorce, but also if we are in a relationship that's not formalized, women will be looking for the negative things that they can't stop. But it also means that women are between like 75 and 80% of the time the ones who file for divorce, right? Men are easier in relationships because men can more easily just like, okay, yeah, this is the way it is, and then just focus on other things. So women are the ones breaking up relationships much more than men because they can, and because when we have that freedom, it also creates emotional insecurity, which means that women also want more confirmation today than they used to. That insecurity will kind of like trigger conflict. And I know many of you women, you can feel this, right? This is why arranged marriages often work better for women. It creates a framework and you can just relax, right? Remember that being free and doing what we want is a new thing historically. We're talking about 2 to 3 generations, right? It doesn't mean that we know what the fuck we're doing as free people, right? So we should not pretend that, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. No, it's not. Look at evolution, right? This is what we're used to. So this level of freedom, also in relationships, we haven't been there before, right? And it doesn't work. It doesn't mean that we should go back, but it also means that we need to learn how to establish relationships that can actually work, because what we're doing now in our culture is not working. So the fun thing is here that when you look at the divorce rate, the worst of all are lesbian couples. Of course, 2 women constantly looking for like negative emotions, right? And of course, the other end of the spectrum, like gay men, they stay married for longer. They're the most successful married couples, and then you have straight couples in the middle. Because of this. So, in conclusion, women suck. But no, the thing is, biologically, when you look at, like as a woman, when you look at your brain chemistry, this is a part of why it's so challenging for women, right? Because you both have a lot of expectations, a lot of emotions, and then with this or that and this or that, and women throughout history have not had this level of freedom when it comes to choosing their partners, right? So it's not that there is a genetic intelligence. It makes it very difficult. Men have always been choosing, right? So today's landscape has not changed that much for men. This is why they can kind of be more calm about where we are now, right? But for women, this is emotionally a lot more challenging. And I think it's important for you women to acknowledge that, yeah, this is difficult. And it's because this level of freedom and choice is historically new, and we need to learn how to navigate, right? And it's extremely challenging. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so we got a question in on email, and a lady, would like to remain anonymous, but the context is all of this, that you're talking about, the various weaknesses we have, especially in also the rapid changes and not being able to adjust to them, it would seem social media just makes it even worse, because it, it really increases our focus on narcissism and confirmation and that kind of stuff. But this student, she writes in wondering, how do we navigate in dating today with all the apps and actually find a potential life partner who is compatible and a good match? Right. And then how do we know that this person is a good candidate or that we're on a good track, especially if we have some bad experiences from before?
Excellent questions. I will first go to the first part of it. And that was?
That was the navigating with the apps and finding...
No, what you said in the beginning when you introduced.
Just mentioning that social media has made things...
Oh yeah, yes. Now, it was a point about narcissism, because narcissism is what basically has become the essence of the modern world. I've talked about this last week as well, that the big corporations, they want to break up families because it's good for business, right? Two household, two of everything. You sell more products. Because people are lonely and depressed, they then eat more junk, and they need more medication, right? We're miserable, so we consume more. Happy people consume less. And families consume even less than that because they're smarter, right? You have hand-me-downs, right? If you have a bunch of kids. You are better at organizing your economy and your life. So, breaking up the family has been a long-term strategy to kind of inflate the market. So we have lost track of family values. Family values does not mean right-wing conservative. Family values mean simply recognizing the importance of having functional families raising kids. And what does that mean? How can we kind of make that attractive for as many people as possible? We talked about last week how we have reached a level where the decline in population is rapid, right? And we're not noticing yet because it takes a couple of generations before we really see it, but we're, off the cliff at this point. It's going downhill very fast, and we actually need, as a society, to have more kids. But when we today are not emphasizing the family, and we're trying to tell everyone that we should all be single, we should just do whatever we want. The biggest goal in life should be to have a job and career and work for a corporation, right? And then be miserable. And all men should just be work, 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 and women should be like boss bitches, and they should, we all are so special and we can't find partners. It's completely fucked up. As a civilization, this is not sustainable. Love, relationships, family, that has always, throughout human evolution, been the core. And now we're trying to tell people that it's not important. Right? It's getting attention in social media instead of having a family, because this is also why we become so egocentric, why we're so obsessed with ourselves, and why we're so narcissistic. Right? In a family, there is no room for that. Right? We get seen for who we are. Right? We get called out for bullshit. We get nurtured and supported. It's real. It's not like we're trying to figure out how can I get people to like me superficially? How can I pose in such a way that they believe that I'm lovable and then give me attention? Right? It's completely insane. And we all become very unhealthy emotionally and mentally. So, yeah, it's not sustainable for society. And this is a huge experiment. And it's not going well. The problem is, what do we do with it? Now, the question was how do we then navigate, right? Number one, understand that you're not the perfect partner to start with. You're not special. you're not interesting, you're not a 10. And then do something about it. It's just like if you want to have a high-paying job, you need education probably. You need to build your CV by maybe having smaller jobs first and then build, so you are an interesting candidate for that high-paying job. Same thing. Being special does not make you interesting. Having needs does not make you interesting. So first you need to look at what type of partner do you want to be? What are you bringing? And again, skip your own needs because nobody's interested, right? What skill set do you want to bring into a relationship? What do you want to build? What life do you want? Right? And then look at yourself. If you're narcissistic, well, do something about that. That makes you a terrible partner. Most people want someone who is also, nurturing and caring. So if you want someone of high value, not necessarily just, when it comes to money and career, but also as a person, you need to be a match for that person. And often, again, we'll look for someone who can compensate. So we imagine this partner like this and this and this and this, and we're just like a pile of shit, right? And why would that person be interested in you? So we need to take a hard look at ourselves. So what am I actually offering? And then do something about it. Make yourself interesting. Understand that if you want to be a good partner, you're not born that way, right? Often as you get older and maybe been through some relationships, you begin to understand what it takes, right? You understand that a relationship is a workplace. It's not a magical space where things just happen and you're just supposed to be loved and appreciated. It doesn't happen. It's work. So the first step is to look at yourselves like, why should anyone choose you? Right? And again, start with that question and skip all the I'm special part, because that's often where we start now. Just like, no. Apart from that, why should anyone choose you? And that's what you need to clarify to yourself. You need to look at, am I good enough? What do I need to do about it, right? You can build skill. In the old days, to be an excellent housewife, as you know, you would go to a homemaker school or something to learn to bake and clean, right? And iron his shirts. But if we think of that, not in a practical sense, but as a partner, right? We need partner skills. And narcissism is definitely not one of them, right? So it's that. Learn about yourself. Do growth work. Prove to yourself that you can take care of your own needs, that you got your emotions in order, that you got your past in order, that you kind of are on track with what you want to create in life and who you want to be, that you have the self-discipline to change. Since a relationship is an ongoing negotiation, an ongoing compromise, it means that you have to display a willingness to change, to learn, to adapt. Are you good at that? There are so many characteristics that are kind of the marks of a good partner, and you can just learn, right? So that is number one. Never assume that you are a good partner because you just think so. We have to be more realistic than that. And number two, after you've done that, look at what type of relationship do you want, right? What is it that you actually want to create? Because often what we do is we try to imagine the partner, right? Oh, and the partner is blah, 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 and handsome or pretty or this or that. Yeah, that doesn't pay the bills. right? It's so funny, like often when I talk with people about this, and they just focus on, oh, I want someone to love me, I just want to blah, blah, blah. I just, someone who's kind and all of that. And I don't know. In real life, you still have to go to work, you have to pay your bills, you have to take care of your parents, you have to, like, you need more than that. So becoming aware of what you want to create. What type of life do you want? How do you want to build it? What type of partner do you need? What type of characteristics, right, would you ideally see in your partner for your life to work and to be improved? And to see, what are you willing to learn? What are you willing to change? In our imagination, we just want someone who's a perfect fit for us, right? That's narcissism right there. You have to also learn, what are you willing to change? Are you willing to move to a different country? Right? If you live in the city, are you willing to move to the countryside? Are you willing to change jobs? Right? All of these things. Just to practice that, yeah, no one will be a perfect fit. It doesn't exist. It's why it's work over time. Right? So that's number 2. Just kind of look at that. Look at what you are willing to do and what kind of characteristics you need. But then you need to understand what actually you want from a relationship beyond being confirmed and beyond, the emotional part. Because that is still not love. When it comes to social media, that's how people meet nowadays. When it comes to navigating social media, and especially when it comes to dating, I always advise people to be extremely clear about what you want. And for women, because women are often used to not being direct, right? That's part of the genetics, where men are supposed to be direct and women are supposed to pretend they're not interested, right? Today's communication is very different. So I advise everybody to be clear about what you want. If you seek a future husband or wife, say it, right? Because that will filter out most of them. It's just how it is. But your intentions need to be clear, and then also state what you are bringing. And you do that by telling, explaining what your life is like, your interests, what you're good at, because this, genetically, we are screening each other, right? Because internally, when you know what you want, you will want to know about a candidate, and you can understand the candidate based on what he or she, kind of what their life is like, what their interests are like, their values, all of that. So you need to bring that to the table. And if you think, well, that means that maybe they won't like me, well, sure. But then you're not wasting your time or someone else's time. So be extremely clear, communicate exactly what it is you're after. And if you want something long-term, say it. You will not be able to create something long-term from someone who's just seeking, a short-term hookup or whatever. But you need to present yourself as a potential partner. If a man is looking for a wife, he's not looking for a slut. It's a very different thing, right? So if you want to be a wife, you have to present yourself as the marrying kind. Someone who will carry those kind of values, the family values. You need to emphasize that part of you. Part of the narcissism is sexual attention, right? And it means that we're using sexual attention just to get attention, right? Because that's what we need. But at the same time, it means that we're not taking each other seriously as long-term partners, because then we're looking for the wrong thing, right? So if you want something long-term, do not be overly sexual. You need to be more conservative in how you present yourself. It's just like, think of how humans have kind of found each other throughout evolution. And think of, like, we haven't changed that much, really. And think of how you like to present yourself if you have a long-term goal. Because that's basically what we're talking about tonight. It's not hookups, because you all know how to get that. It's the other part that's more difficult, right? So, and also for men, I think, a lot of guys today are really struggling because the world has changed, right? And, for men, when you look at how men used to flirt, that would include groping, right? And sexist comments, all of that is part of the male flirtation. But today you could be arrested for that. So many men are quite insecure about how to do this. And men have to learn, right? And then understand, what are women actually interested in? Most women are not into dick pics. That type of communication, right? Women are looking for a husband. If you want to be husband material, you need to see yourself as a husband. Back to, are you bringing it? And then you have to focus on, what does that look like? For a woman, it's, are you trustworthy? Are you reliable? Is this the person I can have children with? And then it means, for a woman to feel that, you need to have direction in life. You need to have a clear value system. You need to show that you're taking care of your family. Close connection with parents, always a good thing. That you are ambitious, that you're kind. So basically, the winner is, as a man, to be ambitious, work with a family, and have a puppy. That's it's that kind of thing. But it's showing that dedication to the goals that will create a platform for raising a family. Right? It's not very difficult, but it's like we simply have to let go of the bullshit that we've been doing for the last 20 years. Right? When we zoom out and look at it, it's like, what the fuck are we doing? We're destroying everything. People are sincerely unhappy today, partly because they don't have family, they don't have relationships, and they treat their relationships as a consumer entertainment program, right? Instead of a place where they can grow and become themselves. And it's that. We need to take a step back and begin to kind of aim for good old-fashioned family values, but interpreted through the time we live in right now.
We've got a question in the audience.
So moving from dating and kind of that part of the beginning of a relationship, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about the possibility for spiritual growth between two people in a longer-term relationship, the experience of going through life's phases, growing older together, and maybe even Tantra and this using bodies, using incarnation as a spiritual journey together. I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Yes, because this is really the interesting part of it, right? As people on a spiritual path, a relationship can be so much more than survival and procreation and comfort. It can become the meeting, a true meeting with someone else, where you can be mirrored, where you can practice, where you can grow, and where you can heal. And where you grow into a state that is the opposite of narcissism, where the whole relationship to you is about loving someone else more than your own life. And practicing that every day and lifting each other and like truly wanting each other to succeed. That can only happen in a relationship where both parties are kind of doing the work, which means doing self-growth work, spiritual practice, all of that, which means we're taking care of ourselves. Because without it, it can't happen. Because then we will always be too focused on our own pain points, our own emotions, our own this or that, and then we will project that onto our partner. Right? Because immediately when we have someone there and we feel that I'm not getting this, we will immediately think that it's that person's fault, because we humans do not take responsibility for anything, right? We don't, because that's a smart thing to do, right? Look at a person like Trump. Again, I just love him because he's such a character. He's never taken responsibility for anything in his life except for things he have not done, but that makes him look good, right? Anything he's done that is horrible, of course, it's someone else's fault. So throughout evolution, that's been a smart strategy. Blame everybody else, because then you can live with yourself, right? So we compartmentalize it. No, that's on that person. I'm perfect, because then you believe in yourself. So we do this a lot also in relationships, that we treat our partners like, you know, a garbage dump. Everything that's wrong with the world, that's your partner's fault. Everything that is not right with your life, it's your partner's fault. Because then we can feel better about ourselves. So through doing spiritual work for real, we get past that, right? Because it's very mature. And at some point we get it, that who we are and who we are not, this or that, value systems, and all, it's just boring. I often say that in spiritual work, you get to a point where you just realize that the ego is so boring. It's so fucking boring. Because it's a limited state where everything is about oneself. And when you understand that you can go past that, everything can be about everything. And you can experience that. And you take that in, that becomes who you are. It's so much more interesting. So also then being in a relationship and seeing the potential that this can actually turn into a portal where I can connect to the universe through the meeting between myself and someone else, where we can explore and open up. And it's not about my needs or survival, it's past that. This is also when the sexual energy also can be transformed into more of a kind of spiritual process, like a tantric work, right? Because that is also connecting the physical sexuality with spiritual flow, and seeing also sexuality as a spiritual practice, right? But then for that to work, you need to have reached a level beyond you wanting confirmation or validation through sexuality and all of that, right? Because it's something else. So I think if you are on a spiritual path where you have spiritual practices, you do have the advantage already to work your stuff out, right? Reach a level of healing in the self so you can stop focusing on yourself, because the only reason why we focus on the self is because we are in pain. Right? Just look at how physical pain works. When we are in pain, emotionally, physically, we become self-absorbed because we want to attract attention. If we are fit and healthy, we don't really care about that. We forget about ourselves. We can forget time and place because we get so engaged in whatever we're doing. Then we're interesting to others. We're all attracted to individuals that bring in more than they take. This is why self-confidence is the sexiest thing. You can see in all cultures. around the world, the number one thing that people find attractive is self-confidence. Right? Because they believe in themselves that when you have self-confidence, you are showing fitness, meaning that you're healthy, you're balanced emotionally and mentally, and you have ambition, and you're someone who will actually make things happen. There are a lot of like all of that baked into self-confidence and when that is being displayed or expressed. Number two is a sense of humor, because that also means that if you're in too much pain, you don't have a sense of humor normally. Sense of humor means that you're able to deal with the difficult things, right? That you have a healthy distance, that you can observe, that you don't take yourself and your possession too seriously. And a sense of humor also indicates that you're willing to learn, that you're not married to your positions, right? Because you can see things from other perspectives and also laugh at it. So it means that, yeah, you have the ability to adapt, the ability to learn and change, combined with ambition, the positive ambition coming from self-confidence. So genetically, these are the two most important triggers for sexual attractiveness. So it's the same thing as spiritual growth work, right? The more we work on ourselves, we get to a state of, not self-confidence, it's just a realization about who we are. Right? We're more balanced because we've dealt with our stuff. We understand that I'm responsible for myself, my well-being, my life. So that will be translated into a confidence that we're showing the world. And then also a sense of humor. So to me, one of the things that I always observe when people actually grow into higher level of consciousness is that they do develop a sense of humor, if they didn't have any. But everything becomes funny because you can't take anything seriously, because you do know that whatever definitions you have, that will be out the window in a while. Whenever you think you figure something out, life will show you that you haven't. So you become more relaxed about everything, right? And it's a sign that you are a better partner. So I think, when we are on a spiritual path, theoretically, we should be better partners because we don't make everything about ourselves. More about the exploration and more about, sharing our journey with someone instead of thinking that that person should fix me or compensate for whatever I'm lacking in my life.
All right, so first we've got some questions on YouTube, and it was perhaps inevitable that a lovely representative of the lesbian contingent of our community is speaking up and wants to put you on the spot, wondering if you are setting out to succeed in a lesbian marriage, how do you go about it? But before you jump in, one of the other students said, it's said to be a high divorce rate because two neurotic people don't function well together. Just saw a short here on YouTube, so sorry for the bad news, best of luck. That said,
Yes.
How might you inspire the lesbian couple to succeed?
Right. Now, I think, just understanding that it's not because you're a lesbian, it's because you're a woman. And that how the brain works when it comes to negative emotions and looking for something negative, that is part of the biology. So it simply means learning to not do that, right? That's a simple way of putting it. It's learning that things are not that important. And then when you look at what men do, what women are so frustrated over is that men don't listen. They can just like, things can happen and, move on. So I often say that the key to a successful relationship is a very short memory. And, it's true. It's choosing to forget whatever is not actually important. And often what I tell people, sure, when you experience conflicts in your relationship, Just ask yourself, like, if I had a choice now to choose this person and look at my life, or to cannot be with this person, try to look at what your life would be like. What's your choice? And then when you choose your partner well, then you have to accept that. See, that's what's important. That's what matters. It's the love. It's the long-term stuff that matters, not what happens in the moment. Right? Because what we can all agree upon is that we all fuck up continuously. And that's okay. It's part of being human, right? Being human is messy because nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. We are here to figure it out. And so it is with our own emotions. So of course there will be conflicts, and we will be doing and saying weird stuff, and so will your partner. Big deal. And then sometimes we can feel that we're in the receiving end of something we don't want to receive, and okay. But then forget about it. It's always understanding that the relationship is not defined by what you have done, but what you haven't done yet. Right? It's a journey forward. Understanding that we learn, we grow closer. Right? When we keep working, when we have the intention of becoming better at this. So, learning to forget about stuff. Like, this is like men do this more easily than women, Among straight men, how they talk about women, they all have this experience that women, they just accumulate stuff. All the little details, right? And when you least expect it, they will stab you with it, right? Because then they have weaponized, you did that, you said that one time. It's that. And put two of those together in the, so lesbians will be doing this, right? So learning to forget, actively choose to forget what is not necessary to remember. Right? When somebody does something, just forget it. Do not define the relationship or a partner based on weaknesses, but on strengths. Tell yourself, remind yourself why you're with this person. We have strengths and weaknesses. We all do. We have things that we are good at and things we really are terrible at. But we need to learn to be patient about the things someone is not good at. That might be a lot of things. Sure. So that's part of being human, right? Is the thing, if we expect someone to behave a certain way because that's what we need, no. It's not how it works. It's forgetting. It's understanding that, yeah, we will both do a lot of unsavory things. It's just like, it's part of being, we should not focus on that. Focus on the strengths. Focus on what you're able to do. Focus on the victories, right? And what is important. Love, connectedness, support, all of that, and simply forget about everything else. It's like when we, like we today, we expect too much of other people and we expect too little of ourselves. And it's also understanding that if we have a life without expectation, it will be a life full of gifts, right? If we live a life full of expectation, life will be a big disappointment. It's the same life, but very different results, right? And it's the same in relationships. Have no expectations. Expect the other person to be themselves. And for you to be able to experience someone else than you is a great gift no matter what happens. Right? So, but again, for lesbian couples, learning to forget, learning to not look for the negative, because two women can amplify that in each other and practice, count your blessings, look at the positives, have concrete projects. Now, it's not because you're like lesbians and you have to build a house and be plumbers and all that, but there's something to that, because when you look at relationships throughout human history, as I said, couples have been doing things together. And when a couple is successful at being partners, it could be, for instance, like redoing the house, raising a family, which is also a big project. You can be working business together, doing things together. Sometimes it be, a family vacation can be a project. It can be taking care of parents, whatever it is. That is how couples have survived. And it strengthens the relationship, because once a couple, when they do things together, it sends signals, this is our life. This is, we're displaying and showing each other that we can survive together. And I will be there for you, you will be there for me. It triggers a very deep genetic memory. So couples who do things together, like and are productive together, they stay together for much longer. So that's also the thing. When you're two women together, when you are good at having projects, often that will create a different focus from looking for negative things, negative emotions, to achieving like positive results and being productive, right? And that will also trigger more of that genetic recognition. So try to then soften the conversations around emotions and needs and all of that. Again, learn to forget. Have a very short-term memory, and always, tomorrow is another day. We'll all just start with positive emotions. Because, when you look at lesbian couples who really are very successful and stay together for the rest of their lives, they're supportive, and they have a very short memory. Like, they simply don't care. They relax, right? And it's getting to that point, because women can be also incredibly relaxed and having that acceptance for everyone, right? And when you bring that into a relationship with two women, I've talked to so many lesbians that in their relationship, they feel that there's like this enormous space of acceptance and support, right? Because that's also an incredible strength that women have. In a family, they can include everyone. Traditionally, there's been no limit to how many people a woman can fit in her heart, right? And when you decide to kind of develop those characteristics in yourself, you will definitely have room for your partner and a few cats.
We've got a question in the audience.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm taking notes, as a woman. And also another thing that I experience in the dating field is that...
Slut.
Yeah. Man, ho. No, just kidding. Is that... I mean, for me, being vulnerable is really hard. Mm-hmm. And I want it to be a safe place to be able to open up and really connect with a person. And in a society today, when we use self-medication, it can either be like a man is a workaholic or an alcoholic or recreational drugs, whatever. It's that distancing, and it can sometimes be hard to connect with a person. And I think the thing I wanted to ask you about is being able to be vulnerable and open, even if that means you will potentially be harmed by that person, and that's probably going to happen too, but still sticking to it and opening up anyway. I feel that sometimes that can also be harder to find a man who is willing to do that.
Yes. Now, let's just start with the men, because men without women are terrible. Because think of, traditionally, men will have more of that ego ambition and that drive, right? They just want to achieve things. Traditionally, that was for the family. That's what it's for, right? So he can provide. He can be that great person to provide for a family and to build, you know, a reputation and give a good starting point for his kids and all of that. So a man will have that in him, and many men do not have a stop button. The woman is that button. So when a man kind of grows up and he does not find a woman in his 20s, that ego will often take over, right? And he will just continue, but it's no purpose beyond his own self and his ego. Because traditionally, once you had a wife and a family, you all of a sudden understood what it's all for, right? And I talked to a man recently who is very successful, and when he got kids, he said everything changed, because he said like he was then extremely driven, and was that typical kind of career guy, very rich, very successful, and it's like just for him to come home and for his son to come and basically hold his leg, you know, that was more important to him than anything else, right? Men need that to balance their ambition. So a man with ambition without a family is, for kind of mankind, a complete waste. So women have traditionally been good at getting those men because they've been very attractive, right? And in the old days, you were supposed to settle down and marry. That was what gave you status, right? So when we're looking at what happened after the Second World War, where women felt that that format of being a wife was limiting, instead of then figuring out how can we kind of keep that, but expand, we pull the plug on that, right? So women do not present themselves as wives, because men, they need that. Because men are ambitious, they will kind of be like wild animals, and women will balance them. We've seen so many professional kind of spaces. It was very male-oriented, and as we've seen, like once women were introduced to the workplace, the energy became more balanced, right? Because you could have that man's man thing, right? And once you have a woman in that place, men will gradually start to behave. So a man needs that female energy to balance out the ambition so he can find purpose in life and become a functional human being. So and those men who respond to this, normally they will be married already, right? So the ones who are left are often the ones who are already kind of brain damaged, because they have been living their life in this ego state without the purpose of family. Right? Again, when we think historically, the purpose of a male, like the male success, would be the family and the legacy of family. So when you don't have that, you just become full of yourself, and then you try to date those men. How can you then turn them? many of those men, they will be afraid of the concept of family because they're basically damaged at this point, right? And they can also feel that when they connect with the energy of stable relationship and family, they're basically like, a college kid that never grew up, right? And it's a little embarrassing and a little gross. But they want to stay in that because then you have horse and drugs and all of that. Yeah, it's so cool and I got a lot of money, but they're empty inside. And meeting a woman that kind of presents more of the family energy, either they will see, well, it's time, or they will be afraid. But you should never try to be vulnerable with a man like that. You have to show him family. Right? Because either a man will say, okay, I'm done with this. He will recognize that he's been, living this life and it's really empty and he wants family. Or he will not be able to commit to anything because then he will be just another woman. Right? So a lot of these men, they will never be able to form a functional relationship. If they are, it's because of the women. And women, you all need to understand that you are the key. As a society, we've tried to erase the mother and the wife, right? And all girls should be boss bitches. And just look at what Disney's doing now. It's a big kind of culture war going on, right? Where there should all be aggressive girls doing their thing, and that's fine too, but one also needs to emphasize family. Females have babies. We're running out of babies because we're trying to tell women that family and kids are not important. You are oppressed if you are a mother and a wife. In the old days, that was the highest honor because raising a family is not easy. It's the hardest job in the world. And women would be recognized for that. Their contribution to society would be recognized. Right? So one has been trying to portray the story of oppression and saying the only way women can stop being oppressed is by leaving the family. It's not working. It's not healthy. And we need to start kind of moving back towards what creates balance. And the family has always been the balancing force, not just in civilization, but also in our lives. So, if you want to have a long-lasting relationship, you have to represent it. You can't try to cater to that kind of fucked up energy that a lot of grown men are in. You have to show them this is what you are, because maybe they will respond to that. Right? And throughout history, for the most part, all men will agree that women have always been in charge. When it comes to family, the wife is the boss. Right? Women have not been without power. It's simply been different responsibilities. Like men have been out in the world, women have been raising the family and taking care of social intelligence. And it's just been two different formats at two different spaces. But women need to reclaim more of that family space and understand that it's a big part of being a woman. So many women also feel that when they have a career and when they're in their 30s, they feel, I have to get kids. And my answer is, of course you should. It's the most important part of incarnating as a woman. The most wonderful, magical part of incarnating in the female body is the ability to have kids. Right? It's not for everyone, but it can be part of the journey. So for women to represent that energy and to Sure, if you're into hookups and all, there's nothing wrong with that. But we're talking about long-term relationships now, right? Try to project a kind of family, wifey energy, right? And also be direct, because as you women know, most men, they just grow old, they don't grow up, right? They need the female adult to be the adult, to lead, and to also be that. Because many men who are very ambitious, they're also boys. They're very immature, and they get away with it. So you need to then be that kind of mother, to be kind of a strong female presence. So you don't try to be that type of woman who will kind of play this kind of slut part, the easy woman, right? Because then you will be placed in a different category. Men respect mothers. There is something in the male genetic, because all men had a mother, right? So once you have that vibe, a man will treat you differently, right? If you go back like 3 generations, what I'm saying now today is controversial. It's insane, right? We're doing this enormous social experiment, and it's not going well. And that's also what we need to look at as human beings, but also spiritually. So, okay, well, we can learn from the past, we can reinvent, but there are certain dynamics here that we may use. And if you want to present yourself as a partner, again, prepare yourself. Be one. Be a match for the type of person you want to be with, instead of waiting for something magical to happen. Right? So many successful men, they want partners that can be a match. I've met so many kind of wives of successful men, and it's really interesting because they're often smarter than he is, but they understand their place. And thinking, okay, he's going out there, he's building a company, all of that. Their job is to manage everything and make sure that he stays on track. You know, so she can scare off the whores and the booze, you know, basically, you know, because that's always been the thing, that strong men needed extremely strong women to manage them. So they could be that kind of raging kind of stallion, but she would be in control of everything, right? And manage the household and the staff and whatever. So many of these women, they're extremely smart, highly intelligent, very strong, but they know the part they're playing, right? It's not oppression. And they both know who's the boss, and it's always her. So it's moving into that energy, right? Because successful men, they don't want weak women. They need someone who can be their boss. And that boss knows how to manage a household, knows how to manage everything, and will not be self-absorbed, not to focus on her emotions. So it's, you know, growing into that version, and also try to communicate when you're on a date what you actually represent. Because if you are in the energy of being a single woman, right, that's the energy you are projecting. Just think of, for many of you women, when you see a guy with a child, right? That triggers an emotional sexual response for most women. It's the same thing, because then you see a man behaving, you know, and being a dad, basically, but he's then displaying the qualities and all of that, sending the signals that, yeah, he's the father type. right? Most women will be extremely attracted to that type of a man. Most women are attracted to men already in relationships, right? Because it sends a different signal. And it's the same thing, right? Women need to learn what men want. They all want their mommy. It's that. And you got to learn how to be one.
I think we have a follow-up question in the audience here.
Yeah, I was really loving, as you're talking about this role of women in relationships, and I was thinking about 2 years ago, my partner and I got to go to South America and visit the 13 abuelas, the grandmothers, and this incredible wisdom that women carry. And I just feel like it's important to also bring that into the conversation, because there's something so needed about that energy. And even in our community here, there's so many women in their 50s, 40s and 50s. And sometimes it's interesting to see the grandmother, the abuela, with or without children, but to see that emerging.
Yes.
And I think it's an important energy. I'd love to hear your comment on that.
Yeah. It's, I often say, as we get older, we begin to ferment. It means that we have accumulated knowledge and experience, but we're not wise yet. For that to happen, it needs to ferment, which means it starts to break down from its original form, and everything becomes more available and universal. There's a wonderful thing about grandparents in general, is if they have gone through that process, they will represent wisdom. And women in most cultures have always been kind of holding everything, right? When you look at how older women used to teach younger women how to be a woman, how to take care of the family, how the older women would also be, taking care of the babies and the kids, but really be the ones in charge. It's all gone. And it's also because we're a different place and we're also on our own journeys. But it's the narcissism projected through corporations and entertainment, making us all depressed and miserable and lonely so we can consume more. I think it's important that we see through that. It's a bluff. And now, we will have AI in a generation or so. People will, have robots as partners, and it's not necessarily healthy, because then it's a matter of finding something that can be a match to all our narcissistic needs, and we'll just become terrible, terrible people. That's the thing. What we see with people in long-term relationships is that they become better people, because they always have to look at themselves and say, okay, is this worth it? Is this, my need, is this worth it? And when you have kids, it's always putting your own needs second or third or fourth or fifth, and that's very healthy. When we're single, it's all about ourselves and our needs, and it creates so much imbalance and so much expectations. So the traditional process of kind of getting older and wiser is gone, because we have turned into egomaniacs that are just consuming, and then we die. Spiritually, I think, when we incarnate into this life form at this time, it's because we have so much potential, right? And also not, the things in the past. I often talk about, we go into a time where in a generation or so, classic values will become more popular again. So it goes in waves. But classic values does not mean that one is orthodox or oppressing people. It simply means that one can look at what has worked throughout the ages and how can we reinvent that for now. So ethics will become a thing again. Being responsible will become a thing again. And doing your part will become a thing again. So I think humans over time will become more intelligent when it comes to relationships, but we'll kind of rediscover that. Because where we are right now, I've compared this a little bit to what happened after the Second World War, where we thought that people in the future that would basically just eating food off of conveyor belts, and over time it will be just like we would just be eating pills and no food. The opposite happened, right? Because at that time it was like, oh, canned food was modern. So like all the TV dinners and everything was supposed to be so futuristic. The opposite happened, right? We discovered food. We got food from all over the world. Food culture has exploded, and we are now enjoying food much more than at any other time in human history. So the thing is, where everyone will be just, relating to AI instead of relationships, the way technology is developing, we will be able to connect emotionally to each other. We will be able to understand each other. Within the next 30 years, we will have brain implants that can assist us in feeling and sharing thoughts directly. We will not have to speak, right? So we can also be brought closer together, and we will begin to understand the value of connecting with others, right? Because it comes to a point where it's like, we're really awful. Yes, we are. And then we have to do something about it. It's just basically just like when we had enough canned food and TV dinners, we kind of eat this shit. Is it over-processed? It's like, it's what? It's the same thing that will happen over time, that we get so disconnected from each other for real that will shift, okay? So when we look at all of this from where we're standing and we think that everyone will be dating robots and nobody will, it's a phase. Just like canned food and TV dinners and over-processed food, we will discover connectedness for real. Technology will help us so we can share our experiences and be together more full spectrum. But we have to learn to be better partners. I think this is like one of the things that I find interesting when I look at this phase of human history, is that most humans today are simply terrible partners. And it takes growth work, right? And skip the whole I'm special thing. Because to me, if you are able to eradicate that part of your thought process, everything is easier. Then we become a lot more realistic about what to expect. And we then understand that, right, for someone to see the value in me, I have to bring value. It's that simple.
All right, so any good advice show around love and relationships is not complete without a little heartbreak. And one of our female students has written in that she has been in a relationship for nearly 1.5 years, and he broke it off just yesterday. I'm stuck between what this whole thing is about and what the process has been. On the one hand, I've experienced not being able to breathe and needing to disappear to make things work. I experienced him being shut off more and more and me not having any access, but also seeing a potential that I wanted to work toward. Things would only work out between us if the relationship was completely on his premise, and he seemed unwilling to change for real and make things work between us. But I've also seen him working on himself and his needs. At the same time, I feel completely fucked up and I've lost a big opportunity. Any thoughts, IKYA?
Well, in general, it's back to understanding what it is we want from a relationship, right? It's back to, we want to be seen, we want to just be in the process, emotion, blah, blah, blah. That's not what a relationship is. It is that too, but the substance of a relationship is understanding what it is that we want to accomplish. What life is it that we want to manifest and create and build? And that was lacking. When it's too much about the process of being together, it's not productive. we need to understand that a relationship is a format. It's a platform from which everything can grow. But we need to see what we want to build, right? What we want to achieve. When we focus too much on the together thing and the feelings and all of that, it will at some point dissolve. Because then we will emphasize the needs and all of that. So it's back to looking at the traditional kind of function of a relationship, and then create more of that kind of family setting. Because I think in negotiations, I'm talking like generally now, not this case in particular, that often we can find that, yeah, this person wants to do it like his or her way, and it is, we lack this skill set now. We do not understand the level of negotiation, the level of kind of going beyond ourselves that it takes to reach that level of connectedness. So, but sometimes we find that, yeah, we're really on different paths here. We want different things, but because we're not talking about it in the beginning. Like in the old days, it was very simple because we all wanted the same thing. It was like, hey, you're raising a family. And as a woman, you wanted a house where you could raise your family and be respectable, right? And for a man, that's also what he wanted. Because everyone wanted the same. Their personal needs did not exist. That was not a thing. It was this. Then was finding someone that could basically do the job, right? This is why it was so simple. I said, if you lived on a farm and you had like someone of the opposite sex and approximate age on one of the farms, you know, close to you, that would be the person. You know, because you all knew what you were heading into, what the purpose was. And that was to have a family and raise them on the farm, right? It makes things easier when we have so many different things in us that we want to explore and want to understand. It becomes complicated. We do not have the genetic intelligence to navigate modern relationships, right? So it is important that we become more aware of what we want, that we're able to articulate and go beyond, I want to be confirmed and seen. Like if we're able to skip that part and look at what are we building and why, in what direction, how do we do it? It's easier then to also recognize, are we on the same page? And if we are, okay, how do we build the skills? Because we don't necessarily have them. Because when we agree on the project, right, that can even be having a successful relationship based on how we define it. We can then agree, okay, when we have conflicts, how do we solve them? You know, how do we look at them? What kind of tools do we need? Because when we have a realistic observation of a relationship, the journey, the product, what it takes, it's easier to discuss that when there are conflicts. If not, well, I feel that, and I think that, it's not relevant. Once we have a project, it's easier to be more objective. So even kind of building a successful relationship, and a successful relationship is one that lasts for more than 25 years, according to statistics. It takes something else than like short-term, kind of egotistical needs and perspectives, right? And today it's so often like, I feel bad. You don't give me what I need. This is blah, blah, blah. And we don't see the long-term thing. And therefore it's difficult also to form relationships, and I'm fully aware of that. But this is also why, again, we need to be more strategic about this. If we go back even 4 generations, a relationship was strategy. So we need to go back to that, and then it's easier. So I think for the both of you in this example, to become more aware of what is it actually that you want in a relationship? Or what is it that you want to build from that relationship? And then start there.
All right. On YouTube, we have an interesting point that in a similar way to this higher success rate of arranged marriages, he's also read that religious marriages are often more happy and satisfied, and even that waiting to have sex until marriage seems to be statistically significant in the success of marriages. Why is that?
Well, back to women. Now, when women have more than 5 sex partners, their ability to have a satisfying relationship drops significantly. Because for the female body, once you have sex with someone, it triggers this whole thing about attaching yourself. Because remember, for a woman, once you get pregnant, and in the old days you normally did, your whole life would depend on that man. So women naturally will attach themselves. And it means that when you have a lot of sex partners as a woman, you kind of kill that side of yourself. Remember also, birth control changes things, right? The female brain does not function the same way. How the female body attaches also emotionally changes. It's a social experiment. Remember that a lot of these things we take for granted today, it's historically new, right? And we've not thought through the long-term effects. So, the more sex partners a woman has, the kind of less will her chances be of having a successful relationship. And it's not based on how men look at her, it's simply how she feels about herself. So the most successful relationships are those where people wait, stay sexually, in the packaging before marriage, because it then becomes the exclusive connection between those two people. It's not necessarily the right way to do it or the wrong. It's just when you look at how the human life form operates, we can see that is part of the success factor. And when it comes to how we kind of navigate today with having a lot of partners, all of that, we've never done that before, right? We need to understand that the difficulties we're experiencing because we have created something entirely new, and none of us are we don't know what we're doing at this point. Now was a second part of the question.
Let's see. It was about. No, it was the first part actually. It was about religious marriages also have
exactly.
more success.
It's the same reason. Now, when you share a belief system, you have a project, right? I often say that in a relationship there are 3 individuals. It's one person, the second person, and who you become together, right? In religious relationships, that also becomes God. So often when it's like God or Jesus or whatever, will be the third person. And you relate to that, and then you treat each other based on that value system. So the rules are clear, and therefore you have a set of rules that go beyond your own personal needs. Right? Often in religious practices, going beyond your own needs will be part of the practices, right? And doing something for the greater good, doing something for God, or doing, and raising your family as part of a religious practice. That is very successful. And it's because how we used to be in tribes and smaller groups and all of that, our belief systems and our set of values were how we identified, how we knew that this is who we are. So it means when we have a certain belief system and we share it with someone, and especially in religion where you have rules to follow, right? Every day will be affirmation of faith. And you can include your partner in that. So you can show that, well, I'm a man of God, so you can trust me. We're following the same rules, and I'm doing my very best, and you will support me. And it means we'll become better people. As I talked about before, most people would be better off in a religion because we're not more advanced than that. It takes a lot of strength to be in modern spirituality and actually become a better person. Because you can just make up whatever you want, right? And you can also be very narcissistic and do that whole thing. It means you can feel, ooh, I'm so spiritual, but you're just an asshole, right? In religion, if you practice and if it's part of the whole family thing, you will have to discipline yourself, right? And yes, all statistics, all surveys show that religious families are happier families, they're more productive, and also they contribute more to the world around them, right? Because that's often part of religious practice, also to try to do good things in the world. So you're less narcissistic, right? And it's that you learn to think of other people. You learn to think strategically. You learn to believe that what you do actually matters, right? So it is a better setting than basing it on your own needs and emotions and what you want your partner to be for you, and then raising a family in that mess, right? So that's why. So we can learn from religion, not religion in themselves, but seeing why do religious families work better, right? And understanding, yeah, okay, you have this set of values, you try to live up to them. You try to demonstrate that to your partner every day, right? And you want to raise your kids to represent your values. And you want to contribute to the world around you and make other people see your family as successful. It's all of that, and we don't need religion to achieve that, right? But back to us needing to be more strategic about relationships and families.
All right, we've got a question in the audience.
Yeah, I would also like you to comment on creating a relationship after menopause, and also if you're an ambitious woman and you have an ambitious partner, how can you bring that family value and nurturing in that type of relationship?
Yeah. Now, answer your last question, get a maid. Because it's that. Basically, when you have two ambitious people, they will be in that aggressive energy and they can't get the household. Like, that was normally the woman's arena, and she would show her love for the family by, doing all of that. What often happens then today is that there is a certain expectation still that women are responsible for that. Women want to be responsible for that. So they create an impossible situation where they then can judge themselves tremendously for not being able to do it all. And women are expert in creating these victim stories about their own ambition, right? First, they want to be ambitious and do it all, and then they judge themselves for not being able to do it all. And then they feel sorry for themselves, for society, expect them to do it all. Well, no one asked them to, right? It's that. So that get a maid. I've given this advice to basically all professional couples I've ever met. Get staff. The moment you can afford it, get staff. Get a nanny. It's not like you're going to see your kids anyway because both of you are working. Get a nanny. Yeah, just be realistic, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's many different ways to raise a family. But pretending that we should be doing it all when we can't, and then letting ourselves and our family suffer because of it, it's not necessary. So when you have two ambitious people, get help. Just do that, and it works. Because the thing is, although I'm focusing on family values, it does not mean that we should go back, in time. Because also, when it comes to how society works, where we're at today, where we should create a world where everybody is included and where everybody can do what they want and use their talents, that is smart for our civilization, right? Because simply because you are in a certain type of body does not mean that your intelligence is limited, right? And so we need the best people to do the job, no matter what that job is, no matter what kind of like form or gender or whatever that person is. So we will never go back, right? But we have to understand that still genetically we operate on certain values that will make us happy or unhappy. So finding solutions that can give us success in our relationships, in our lives, that's a smart thing to do. But in Northern Europe, having staff has been considered to be, now you're not supposed to unless you're like very rich, but one can find solutions. But especially for women to try to tell themselves a story that they should be able to do everything and then cry about it at the same time, it's not necessary, right? If we figure out, okay, my salary is this, and the salary for paying someone is less, well, okay, makes sense, right? If you make less per hour than what you would pay someone, then it doesn't make sense, right? But then you can also have that as ambition. I told Sarah, well, earn more money so you can afford it. Because if you're ambitious, you're going to end up there anyway. Well, do it sooner, right? So women should not hold themselves back, right? And some men are really good at taking care of the home, but most men will never be because it's not in their genetics. It's just how it is. So getting help is smart. And for many people, simply don't clean the house, right? It's that thing like, why do we have to clean the house if you can get someone to do it, right? Because if we want to have a successful life, it's also what will give us more quality time, And it's back to the thing we're thinking, we come home from work, both are being busy and successful. Yeah, and then the best thing to do is to clean the house. How is that relationship building? If both are into it, fine. But for most people, simply something you have to do, and it can make you more grumpy, right? Think of spending that time together instead. So we need to find ways to be more efficient in nurturing what we want in the relationship, right? So I think for women especially, learn to recognize when you can hire people so you can buy yourself time. Time is the most precious commodity we have today because we all work. And spending money so that we get time to do what actually matters is important. And for a lot of women, this would have saved relationships.
All right. So we have a question about conflicts. How can conflicts be a good thing in a relationship? Most people see it as a negative and a big red flag and a reason to break up. But when do you know, and then, so can conflicts be positive and which ones? And then two connected questions on the, going over the boundary of, is betrayal a conflict that can be overcome? How do you know that conflicts are destructive?
Conflicts are by nature a positive thing because conflict is simply two positions trying to figure out what works better. Evolution means conflict. Every type of progress means conflict. You have what is there and then something else, and then they have to figure out what works better, and that's conflict. So all evolution, all progress, all growth is based on it. And just think of all the internal conflicts you're having in this very moment, right? All the thoughts, everything that's going on. And it's you trying to figure out what works better. So conflict is absolutely necessary. Now, conflict without the willingness to change, that's destructive, right? Because the point of conflict is to figure out which one of these two alternatives are better. What are most kind of suited for the movement forward, right? So if two people are in a conflict and they have learned not to change, not to adapt, then there's no point, right? Because then it's just dominance. It's not figuring out which position is the best one. Because like winners, they are good at learning which position is better, and then they will move to that one, right? Because that's a smart thing to do. Always trying to figure out what is the better option here. And often, it's not our own position. It might be someone else's idea or someone else's action, whatever it is. You move there because that works better. That's smart. But when someone, based on their psychology and emotions and whatever else, have figured out to never learn, that's a red flag. When they don't want to adapt, when they never change opinion, that's not healthy, because it means they're not growing. We cannot grow without changing. And changing means we also change opinion. We learn, we add, we do all of that. So a healthy conflict is when both parties, they can fight it out, but they're also interested in learning, because then they can just think about it and they, then figure out, oh, right, you actually made a good point there. Oh, let's try that, right? Because somewhere inside of us, we want the better option. So if you are in a relationship and you experience that your partner never does this, then the conflicts are destructive. And then either stop having conflicts or end it. You can also learn. It's also talking about things, right? Seeing professionals and working with it, but that type of conflict is destructive. And also recognize in yourself, right? Are you too much invested in your position and you just want to be right? When we want to be right, that's a sign of kind of destructive discussion or conflict. Because being right means that we're not interested in figuring out what works best, right? That's a sign of someone who will be dying in an evolutionary process, because as I've said many times, evolution is something changing in the environment, and the current programs and behavior will not be working anymore. So you will have random mutation happening, where all sorts of things will be happening, nobody knowing what is happening, because it's simply a stress reaction forcing individuals to do weird things and to develop different characteristics. Over time, one will see what type of mutation, change in behavior or biology will work better, because the ones who are able to adapt better will survive and they will become dominant. So it's just that, right? So you need to look at yourself too. If you want to be right, it means you will not have the willingness to adapt, because that's not the point. When we are involved in spiritual work, we should always look for growth. We should always assume that we are wrong, right? Because life has more, is more. and goes beyond our definitions. So when there is a conflict, it's an opportunity for us to look at, oh, where am I standing? Like, what am I doing? Am I too invested? Do I want to be right? So we can look at that, because often when we experience conflicts in a relationship, both may be standing in that stubbornness, right? So you can only control yourself, not your partner. So at least what you can do is to look at your own willingness to learn. Look at your own willingness to adapt and to explore positions that are not yours. And you know, sometimes also, it's so interesting often when you look at people's conflicts. They both, like, it should be this way, it should be that. When I look at both of these positions, like, it doesn't matter. You can do this way, that way. It really would not matter at all. And it's learning that often things we create conflicts about, in the big picture, no difference. They have variations, different options, but is it really important? And this is also what we need to ask ourselves when we are in a conflict. Is this really important? Right? Does my life change if we choose this or that? So we need to zoom out and learn to see the bigger picture, because in most cases, the conflicts we think are so important with this, oh, okay, might as well do it this way, because it doesn't matter. And many people have been married for a long time. They've learned to do this, right? It's the happy wife, happy life thing. But it's not just men doing it, women do it too. It's like, there are certain areas that mean a lot to my partner. Well, let him or her make the decision there. And this means a lot to me. Okay, so I will make the decision. And sure, works fine. Because often individual decisions are not important. They're not life-changing. They don't matter. It's just that we want to be right. So practice to not be right and to not need to be right. It gets in the way of so much.
All right. So as part of strategy, is it a good starting point to look more for a type of best friend partner that you are safe and sort of good with, rather than having passion or a sexual chemistry or falling in love? Is that really important?
No. And the reason is, and there's a lot of science or studies also showing this, that, you know, and people have experienced the friend zone, right? That's deadly if you want something more. The interesting thing is men see the friend zone as a stepping stone. For women, when they have defined a man as a friend, they turn off sexually. They do not see a man in the friend zone as a potential partner. Normally, they are always exceptions, but in general, they do not see him as a partner. Otherwise, she would not place him in the friend zone. Men are not as picky. And that's the truth. Women look for excuses, because remember that traditionally, men wanted all women. Women were supposed to say no, because maybe they can get a better one, right? And if they gave themselves to the first person, that was that. So they wanted to see what are my options. So women should hold back and be more critical, right? So, and men are basically, I want to spread my seeds, you know? So the psychology in men and women are different when it comes to this. So for women, I would say it is important back to being clear about what is it that you want, right? And it's okay to place a man in the friend zone, but then also understand that it will not be the two of you. Because when we feel kind of passion and attraction, there is something there. Remember, that is also a we respond genetically. It also means that we are compatible. There are certain things we recognize that will make us attracted. And the most important thing is that, unfortunately, it's because they remind you of your parents. That's the number one genetic response. Because remember, and it's actually smart. Like most men end up with their moms, most women end up with their dads. And the reason for this is, of course, you come from a gene pool, right? And it means genetic compatibility and cultural compatibility, you know, is the same, because like you have a set of behaviors and beliefs and this or that, right? So once you have someone that reminds you, for instance, if you're a woman, reminds you of your dad, okay, I'm compatible. We have the same values. We can make things work because these little signs remind me of my dad and I already know him, right? So it's a sign that we're compatible, right? And genetically, okay, it's some similarities because your dad, my dad and my mom, okay, it's a mix there. So there are certain aspects here. So it's compatibility and also, you know, what can work, what can be stable, and also for that partner to be accepted by my family, right? And it's known, I know how to behave around my dad, so I know how to behave around you. So it's that, right? And for men, it's the same thing. Most men are attracted to women that will resemble their moms. So, you know, that's a pretty strong trigger. And it's the strongest one. And I think most people who end up getting married, most of them, I would say more than 90%, will recognize that, yeah, there are similarities between my partner and, you know, my parent. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually the smart thing to do. Yeah, that's basically what you should be looking for. Like in the old days, that would be something that we would be aware of. So a man would try to find a woman that was the younger version of his mom, right? Because it's just, yeah. And this is also why the classic tale, right, of the wife and the mother-in-law, because they were so similar, right? They would attack each other because they're basically the same person. But it's also compatibility because they also knew they could work together. They were fighting over the man, basically, who's to be the mother, right? And because a mother is also the wife. It's the boy's first wife, right? And then the wife is the second mother. So it's the psychology is really interesting, but it's definitely a part in us genetically where we also recognize compatibility. And it's been a smart move throughout evolution, so that's kind of stayed with us.
Got a question in the audience.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to state this question, but it's basically like a reflection on, like, you have described a lot of different kind of how we have worked traditionally, and then we have this, like this, the society how it is now, and then also when you are in the kind of this awakening process, you also explore also what you are outside those programmings. And I can just speak for myself, but also working with clients, also experiencing that you kind of have a different kind of confusion in that process of having a lot of different kind of painful experiences, being in different types of relationships and being hurt, and also through that develop different strategies on protecting yourself and like, yeah, and so at least I can also recognize that we are almost not we are not trained to be prepared for that something can be really good, that something can really be really like nice. We are prepared for that, protecting ourselves and like be getting pain points activated and then work on that, and then yeah, so at least for me, that have been almost like we are not kind of rooted or expecting that something beautiful or something really nice and yeah, loving can happen in a way.
Yeah, sure. I
Yeah.
think that goes for like everyone, right? It's back to the best thing for humans is to get married in their 20s before all of that happens, right? Because again, we're not equipped. And this is, you know, it might sound like today we're speaking very horizontally, but it is understanding that our relationships, they're so horizontal. There's so much genetics, hormones, all of that being the main component, right? And we incarnate into this life form and we have to deal with it. So yes, when we are on a kind of freer path and life path to today, since we're not biologically equipped to deal with it, we get the crash between, and I find it fascinating and fun, between often, you know, the kind of spiritual journey, the being incarnating, being very aware of themselves, right? And then we get all these biological needs, right? Because we also have the biological needs in relationships, and our genetic makeup is a much bigger part of who we are and what we do in a lifetime than often we want to admit to. So it becomes very messy and very complicated, but it is also in that we get the freedom to redefine, right? And explore and find our own path in it. But then we also need to learn to take responsibility, right? We need to learn to co-create. We need to go beyond the needs. Because when we are exploring in a new way, we can't at the same time say, boo-hoo, nobody loves me, I want to be validated, right? Because sure, get married in your 20s and have kids. That's, you know, so we cannot both sit there and suffer because we're not living 100 years ago, right? And at the same time want to be free and explore. We have to choose. So again, we need to do the growth work. We need to do the homework. We need to settle. We need to heal, all that, because then modern life is wonderful. The challenge is that people don't. So they just have multiple layers of pain and suffering, then self-medicating, you know, themselves out of their minds, fucking up all relationships because they have so many unmet needs that they can't even think straight, right? So we need spiritual practices and disciplines so we can get ourselves like into a state of balance, because otherwise we simply are not able to deal with the kind of modern life and modern relationships. As we talked about earlier, on a spiritual path, we have the opportunity to seek something higher. We have the opportunities to truly create new types and new forms of relationships that are not based like on the old template. But then we can't at the same time suffer because we're not in the old templates, right? And I see so many people in a modern spirituality, they want both. So they're suffering, they have not dealt with their emotions, they've not dealt with their family, they've like all of this stuff that is part of the old, and yet they want to be open and have like a spiritual relationship and all that, and they can't make it happen. So it takes more self-growth work, right? It takes more responsibility and have a clear direction in who you want to be, how you want to present yourself to the world, and what type of relationships you want to build. But sure, it's fully possible to have a relationship without that suffering, without that projection of your own needs, where every day is kind of magical because you're simply experiencing yourself and your healing and your heart in concert with someone else. And it's just this wonderful, wonderful experience. But it can only happen once you've dealt with your more primitive stuff.
All right. Do we have a question in the audience?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yes, I think it's
You need a microphone.
kind of Life, we live longer and longer. And I think my life has been, I have done it all, kind of. And when my husband left me because he died 2 years ago, I feel that I have, he was 10 years older than me, so I know this would come one day. But what I think now is two things. I have made up my mind to use this time I have left. You talk about so it's long when you think that we should live in. We are going on and on. But when you are lived, when you are in my age, and what you talk about women, and actually I have good friends, and I can see that. But what kind of relationship should I have? Kind of, because I want to grow, and I think that I'm not there that I want to sit in my sofa and do nothing. I want to do something.
But I think when it comes to relationships, when we're older,
Yeah.
it's often kind of different than
Yes.
when we are in our 20s, because
Yes.
it's not like you're establishing a family and having kids. You're
Yeah,
probably a little, past that. So, and that's just a part of the human journey today, is that we get older and we form relationships also as we get older for different reasons. And I think that is wonderful. But
Yeah.
what is also interesting is often when you talk to older couples is that they are more realistic, right, about themselves and about life, and that they don't project as much. They can just appreciate having someone there, right? And it can be lovely and nice. It's not like they have a list of demands, right? So as we get older, we relax more of our self-centeredness, and we can appreciate the company and the sharing. And often one can move into love faster, right? Because it's not this list of demands, right? It's not that narcissism. So of course one can have kind of form relationships at any age. But I think in your age, often people find, as you say, that friendships, that's kind of their main form of relationships. And sometimes we can also meet partners. I think finding partners, because now people should expect our part of the world to live until they're 100, right? So dating will go on until we're dead. So, of course, it's going through the same process as everybody else. But back to us, it's always defining what type of relationship is it that we want, right? What do we want to achieve by it? Because that always needs to be the starting point when it comes to finding a partner, because it's like a casting process, really. You have to find the right person for the part. And if we're not aware of what we want, we will always be very dissatisfied. The thing is, for instance, if you go to a restaurant and it's like, okay, like I'm open to anything, and just give me something, and then you get it, well, except for that, I don't like that. That's how we are. So we always need to be aware of what it is that we want approximately, and then just see. So in your case as well, it's the same as in all ages. If you want to find a partner, it's like understand what it is you want, what characteristics, what you're bringing, and also where to find someone. And then it's just experimenting.
It was when you talked about men and how men are. I thought that because I'm I know a lot of, not a lot of it in this way, but a lot, I met men who are successful,
Mhm.
but I also met the little boy back. This
Yes.
was-
Yes.
And
Exactly.
I think it's because of my age or because of what I have experienced through my life. It's easier to see the little boy.
I think so. I think it's interesting also that as men get older, they become more aware of the boy
Yes,
and they
yes.
appreciate him more. Right? So it's like when men are younger, they are boys trying to pretend to be men. Right? But when they get older, they're like men pretending that they're boys.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just the boy is always there. It's just like in what order.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, we've got a comment on YouTube. For the first time in my life, I feel a great love and excitement just to see my partner grow. You've talked about the Michelangelo effect before, and I try to be on the right side of that effect and continuously look for potentials. Yet at the same time, it seems important not to be naive and expect miracles. Could you comment on that?
Well, I think you're on point. Just appreciating being with someone who is not you. And so, like, the worst nightmare for everyone should be with someone who's just like yourself, because you can hardly stand yourself. And it's I said, whenever someone wants to be with us, it's a miracle. Because we all know that we're not a catch, right? And it's what happens in the connection. I always say that we exist in the connection. We do not exist just in us. It's in the connection between us and others, right? So it means that when we connect, and we have many forms of connections with someone, it's in that we exist. And it's in that meeting we become someone. Because on our own, we're nothing. Right? It's only when we're activated, that's when we live, that's when we exist. So in meeting someone, we become interesting, we become someone. Because it's that co-creation in many different aspects of ourselves. So we become better, we become interesting, we become someone. And we need someone who is not us for that to happen. We need someone who are in different positions, with other values, other viewpoints, other ways of doing things, right? Because that's when we're stretched. That's when we can discover other parts. That's when we can be in co-creation. So yes, learning to observe and appreciate and just like feel that it's a miracle that I'm with someone. And for me to exist in the meeting points, right? And then discover myself through someone else. It's the most significant thing in life we can experience, right? And being with someone, nurturing relationships, experiencing love for all life forms, not just humans, but for all life forms, that is the most significant part of our life, right? We grow more through relationships than we do in any other form, any other arena. And I think it's important that we kind of truly appreciate that. Also, when we are fortunate enough to be in a relationship.
All right, I think we're out of questions.
We should be. So, but, what I'd just like to say is that, wherever you are in life and whoever you are, whatever journey you're on, it's not like you only have one option. There's no such thing as just the right one. There are different pathways, different avenues, different spaces. You're connected to all life around you. You're connected to thousands and thousands of souls. as part of your study and your exchange. So you are already in relationship with thousands of beings that you're actively exchanging with. You're going in and out of lifetimes, you're in different constellations. You're never alone. You're always loved, you're always supported, you're always nurtured. That spiritual family. I often compare that to, if you can imagine a Greek or Italian family where everybody just like they're there for each other and they just love each other. It's like that, only a lot better, a lot more intense. And you have thousands of beings that love you and nurture and support you. And sometimes we're fortunate enough also to experience relationships of that quality as a human. But often we also choose relationships based on our karma, based on what we're here to figure out. And therefore there will be more conflicts. There will be more challenges, right? Because a relationship is where you grow the most. So you will have to deal with your karma. It's important that we include the karma and the resistance and the growth in our relationships and don't think that they should just be beautiful. It's work. And there are many candidates. Within a lifetime, you have many different options. There are many people. And what we also learned today is that there are many different types of relationships. It's not marriage or nothing, right? We live in a world now where we can form like so many different varieties of relationships, and we can explore our connectedness with others in so many different ways, right? But having love in your life, no matter what it is, if it's an animal, if it's a human, whatever it is so significant. Whatever you can do to open your heart, to give love and receive love and being a space of love is the most important thing you can possibly do, because it opens your consciousness, it opens your healing. But as always, you can only manifest what you are. If you are in suffering, if you are like in a consciousness of karma, you can only manifest relationships that will reflect that. Because that will be your journey. If you open yourself up to your spiritual potential, which means moving beyond needs and suffering and looking at everything you haven't learned yet, everything you want to explore and unfold in you. If that is your identity, if that is what you vibrate, that's what you will find. You cannot be in a state of like suffering and feeling sorry for yourself and find someone and establish a relationship based on exploration and unfoldment and healing. It will not happen. It will be a relationship that reflects your resistance and your karma. So when you go out there and try to manifest a relationship, really try lift your consciousness, lift your identity, right? See that you want a life that opens up everything, where your talents, your opportunities, all of that is what you want to spend your life and energy on, not the rest, right? Understanding that we all have resistance, we just plow through it and we aim for where the greatest growth and unfoldment is, right? You can only manifest what you are, right? The extension of who you are, your identity, that is what you will find in a partner. You will find a match for that, right? So when you imagine the type of relationship you want, you have to be half of that. You have to carry that energy. You have to be that person. Because when you do, then you will find your partner. When you are in a space you don't want to be, you will find a partner that you don't want to be with. And that's where most people fail. You have to be someone you want to be. You have to be in a place you want to be with. You need to have clear goals. You need to lift your consciousness. You need to identify with your unfoldment, with your potentials, right? And then that will externalize. That will be the partner you meet, and that will eventually become your life.
Thank you so much, IKYA, and thank all of you for joining us on IKYA Live, World News from the Spiritual Perspective, and again, your premier news program for practical spiritual advice for your everyday life, which we got tons of tonight. So again, please like and share tonight's episode widely with everybody, friends, family, fellow spiritual seekers. And be sure to join us next Monday at 19 o'clock Oslo time, both online here on YouTube Live and here at IKYA Center in Oslo, Norway. So from all of us to all of you, have a wonderful and love-filled Valentine's week.